Folks, welcome to the latest fantasy football Q&A here on the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. I'm Denny Carter, joined by my favorite Zoomer on planet Earth, Kyle Dvorchak. Pat Doherty is on vacation as usual, luxurious vacations all over the world. Roto Pat is famous for. He will be back next week, apparently. So we will join him next week. But on Thursday, I just wanted to mention real quick before we get started here with the Q&A, and please, of course, send in your questions. Any questions related to fantasy football, redraft, dynasty, even if you're a DFS sicko and you want Kyle's thoughts, throw them in there. But on Thursday, Kyle and I will be doing the preview for which ones, Kyle? AFC and NFC South. No, West.
There you go.
The West, yes. Teams like the Chiefs. Such as the Chiefs,
West is a good one, right? West might be the most interesting because Chiefs are like frustrating, but in a way that is interesting for fantasy. Like if they ever become good again, that would be awesome.
Right.
Raiders, super interesting quarterback turnover. Even like second year Bo Nix is interesting. Who was the last team I'm missing in that division?
Chargers.
Kind of interesting. Like
yeah,
I think they're actually like loaded with talent, and they don't. I'm afraid they don't want to use their talent. I'm afraid they have Justin Herbert and they have Ladd, and they're like, what if we just ran the ball anyways? But it is a really interesting topic for discussion. And the 49ers may be the most interesting team, I think, in all of fantasy football, because Christian McCaffrey, if he is CMC, is just clearly the number one overall pick. Like George Kittle could easily be the top scoring tight end. And then this is a team where we were paying 2-3 turn spots for their top two wide receivers last year. And now it's like 60 something with overall. Juwan Jennings is their top drafted receiver. Like, really interesting stuff, and a lot of like potential landmines on that entire Western division grouping.
Absolutely. I wrote up the Chiefs offense, a preview of the Chiefs offense. It's on the homepage at Rotoworld right now. I'll have the Raiders write up ready for tomorrow morning if folks want to check that out. I actually got really into the Raiders, Kyle. I guess I've written about them as like a best ball stack that I like a lot. But I feel like their personnel can work and with in Chip Kelly's offense, and it's all very concentrated, right? Like, you get Bowers' crazy target numbers are incoming. I think Jacoby Myers is going to be seeing more targets than anybody has him tabbed for. And then you have Ashton Jeanty getting all the touches in the backfield. And I do not want to hear the Raheem Mostert stuff. Okay. Like we already have two blurbs, and we blurb what is said, so it's not our fault. But Pete Carroll saying, "Look, we're not doing the one back thing. Okay, we're doing multi backs. We never know." Raheem Mostert, looked it up. The analytics don't love Raheem Mostert. The only rusher last year with a worst EPA per rush was Zamir White, who's also on the Raiders roster, and of course Mostert was second to last. So I just don't want to hear it. So it's Jeanty, it's Bowers, it's Jacoby Myers. We're gonna talk about it on Thursday, but for now,
can I pitch you Raheem Mostert? We're definitely not talking Raheem Mostert on the Thursday show. I promise you, this is the only time we'll do it. Okay. It does seem very. I agree. We love all of our backs. We're gonna have a 1-2 punch, thunder and lightning. It's crap. You spend the whatever pick 6 or 5, I forget which one they spent on Jeanty, and you give him 300 touches. I do not think we'll be seeing any Raheem Mostert if Jeanty is healthy. The fact that they are glowingly talking about the RB2 does make me think in their minds they have a clear backup. And when you get to like the 20th round of best ball drafts, like, dude, we are drafting Dylan Laube and Kamani would all shot up to the 15th round, let alone 20th round. Like, we are drafting guys who will get cut, who will be game day inactives for an entire season. I think Raheem Mostert is going to be just active every single week, mostly not contributing to your fantasy roster, but should anything happen, or just in blowout games. Like, he may be getting a little cleanup in the fourth quarter. If Jeanty leaves early and tweaks his ankle, if something worse happens than that, I think he's the clear RB2. And in the 20th, 19th, 18th round, finding a clear RB2 this early in the offseason, we're 2 weeks out from training camp. Like, I've been dabbling with a little bit of Mostert, 20th round, DraftKings only. Don't worry about this in redrafters. Well, Scott Fish roster's kind of deep too, to be fair.
Right. Yeah. Well, first of all, you're sick, and secondly, why are you projecting an injury for Ashton Jeanty? Why are you?
Yeah, everything. These things happen. Like, what are you gonna do? Go out and be like, oh man, I'll take who's your favorite 20th round pick? Like, they all suck. These are all terrible, terrible picks. You have to make a pick though. And
yes,
I want the guy who I think he just is the RB2.
Oh man, my last round draft pick the other day in a best ball draft was that Devin Neal from New Orleans.
I was taking a bunch of him right after the draft because I was like, he's just the clear RB2. I was doing the same thing. I don't know if I'm confident in that.
Yeah.
Like, could Kendre Miller just like come back from the dead? He has a coaching staff that doesn't hate his guts, and they're like, oh, it turns out he's not bad. He can be our RB2. So I was taking a bunch of Devin Neal. I hope we get training camp buzz on him. But I scaled back just a little bit because I was drafting a lot of him.
Yeah.
I love that click, obviously.
Yeah. So the thing about Kendre Miller, the former Saints staff despised the guy. Okay,
hated him, man.
like anytime you mentioned it to Dennis Allen, mentioned what's his name, Miller to Dennis Allen, he would openly like scoff and be like, I don't know.
I mean, he openly put him on IR as like a spite. Like, you can't stay healthy. We're putting you on ice for 4 weeks, when he did not seem like he needed 4 weeks. And Miller said as much at the end of the season.
Yeah. So, Devin Neal, to me, I've always kind of been a sucker for guys who athletically, he doesn't stand out. Metrics wise, he doesn't stand out.
He's okay. He's not like terrible in the metrics, but go ahead. I know.
Production. He's just a productive guy.
The guy touched the ball a ton of times, a ton of years in college, and that typically translates to getting to do the opportunity of that again at the NFL level. I like him too. I like him a lot.
I feel like that's an underlooked thing. Like, I have been doing this for 3 years. I've been getting the ball 28 times a game, and I've been going for 130 yards on those touches and scoring touchdowns. I know how to do it. I've done it. Keep me going here. He's not going to be special or anything, but if Kamara misses time, which I feel like Kamara is kind of invincible at this point, I get burned on him every year. But nevertheless, I will persist with taking Devin Neal. Okay, send in your questions, folks. Thanks for joining us for this Q&A. Of course, the first comment here is from Dynasty Dave. He mistakes me for Brian Johnson, the billionaire who's trying to live forever. I would like to say once again, I am not Brian Johnson, as far as I know. Before we get started, though, Kyle, I wanted to ask you, as far as redraft goes, and you probably haven't done like redraft leagues yet. You're still immersed in best ball. If you're going like real zero RB in redraft, are there any guys in the middle rounds, any running backs, I should say, in the middle rounds that strike you as must-haves who can like kind of help you like gimp across the finish line a little bit? Like, what I mean by the finish line is like get you to like week 4 or 5 or
the
6.
Midway point of the season. Yeah. Give them across the finish line to where your fun picks are starting to hit.
Yes. The fun late round guys, the 12th, the 15th round running back who might pop by that point, by midseason around there. Are there any guys in the middle rounds that you are targeting right now?
I think the best profile of all of the, we'll bring this up. Actually, we'll talk about Ken Walker on the West show on Thursday.
Yeah.
For my money right now, he's the number 2, maybe the number 1 in terms of like, this guy just looks really good at football year in and year out. And last year he had maybe his best pass catching season of his entire career is James Conner. Like, the Cardinals offense was good last year. They were just good because they were good at running the ball and had a good success rate. And they played slow and it wasn't very fun. But in terms of like scoring points and having a good EPA, like they were fine. Like I think they were like, 11th or 12th in EPA per play, which is, it's not special. It's not going to win them the Super Bowl. Didn't even make in the playoffs, but it gets the job done for fantasy purposes. It keeps the chains moving and gets James Conner to 250, maybe 300 touches. It's what allows Trey McBride to nearly set the receptions record for a tight end. It's just good enough to let the volume eaters really do their job. And that last year was James Conner and Trey McBride. James Conner had one of his most efficient seasons of his entire career, one of his best pass catching seasons of his entire career, as long as he stays healthy, which is hit or miss with Conner. But the thing is, we're not talking about he needs to play 17 games. We're saying we need to get him to week 11 or 10 until Devin Neal takes over, until our favorite late round picks take over. And he's my favorite bet. I think Ken Walker is an interesting one too. If you want to go like really push it, I could see Jordan Mason just being, all signs point to him being the goal line back. Aaron Jones does not need to be getting a career high in touches again at the age of 31. And last year, as he was getting, I believe, a career high in touches, because he played all 17 games somehow. I think he left one game early and then got the bye. And actually that helped him stay, quote, healthy, really stay active, is all of his metrics started to drop off last year. Shockingly, the old guy who gets like the most touches he's ever gotten did not handle the workload he got particularly well. Like, I don't want to say like his fault. This guy's not good because he can't handle 300 touches. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's not a player who should be getting 300 touches, but that makes it very clear that Jordan Mason is going to have an early down role and is going to score touchdowns. And I just want to be buying pieces of the Vikings offense. So those are kind of my two. If you want the like grossest one, it's Roschon Johnson.
Yeah,
like Roschon Johnson it's like neither of these. Another one where like, I don't think DeAndre Swift is good. He was dreadful in every single efficiency metric last year. He really hasn't been the exciting running back we wanted him to be since he was a part-time player in like 2021 or whatever. Like, I just don't think he's that good. He looks like a change of pace RB2, like a Khalil Herbert type, where like he's fun on unlimited touches and you give him the full workload, and it's not fun. And I think that guy will typically always have a compliment. And Roschon does look like just the unexciting, boring, but can push another guy for touches when that guy is not good type of player.
You also, you want the primary backs attached to offenses that keep the ball moving and, get a lot of first downs and have game script on their side. Now, last year, the Bears running backs didn't benefit from any of that. This year with Ben Johnson calling plays, I think that I would say safely that they're more likely to benefit from that sort of game script and that sort of matriculation down the field. Which is why, look, I know we just said, DeAndre Swift stinks, but all indications are that he's entering the season as the RB1. Is that right?
Who? What?
DeAndre Swift?
Oh, yeah. No, there's no. Sorry, I was thrown by that question. Yeah, there's no. I don't think there's any indication that he won't be the top running back. I'm just really skeptical that the head coach who was at the time the OC, who was playing like on his second team, Justin Jackson snaps over him. I'm skeptical that Ben Johnson, who really did not seem to fancy himself DeAndre Swift it was like 2021, if I remember correctly, that he's going to go out and for an entire season, for 17 weeks, let DeAndre Swift be his RB1. Maybe the only caveat there is like, I also don't think Roschon's very good. Like, Roschon was not a good college prospect. We wrote a lot of that off because he played behind Bijan Robinson for most of his career, and that's a reasonable excuse. Then he gets to the NFL, and he looks like a college backup playing in the NFL again. So I think it's really the cost. If DeAndre Swift was really cheap, I would be totally in on just like, this guy looks like a lot of touches for pretty cheap. But right now, that's the opposite that we're getting. He's the guy who you have to pay for the certainty that he is the top back. And I think he is in week 1 and week 2. I think that bet becomes pretty shaky as the season goes on.
So Swift has actually seen, and this is the best ball ADP, which I think is, still, viable at this point. I know redraft ADP will be slightly different in some cases, but DeAndre Swift on May 1st was going as the 106th pick in best ball drafts. Today, he's going as the 74th pick. So you're talking about a 30-plus pick jump for DeAndre Swift, I guess because of the Bears not taking a running back in the draft, the Bears not signing any, real new competition for Swift. And it's not going to be pretty, but he is involved in the passing game, I think, enough. And also this whole thing about, we're doing screens, folks. That's what Ben Johnson says. Look, I don't know what else we're doing this year. I don't know if we're winning any games, but we're going to do lots of screens, right? That would figure to be pretty good, I think, for DeAndre Swift. I think Caleb Williams actually had the second or third most screen passes last season. So he seems, into the idea of screening his way downfield. I don't know. I think Swift as a 0 RB, bro. If I want someone to help me get through the first 6 or 8 weeks of the season, I feel like Swift jumps out. I think some other guys here, Jordan Mason going as RB31. I think that makes sense. Jaylen Warren is probably my favorite pick here to function as this. And I know you're on the same page. Thankfully, I like being on the same page as you. Makes me feel smarter. Jaylen Warren going as RB32, and his ADP has not changed at all over the past 2 months. So he's just hanging out there, and I have a hard time believing that he's going to be like phased out for a rookie, like between the tackles grinder like Caleb Johnson. So I like Warren a lot, and also the fact that, and we talked about this on the show a few weeks ago, I think Aaron Rodgers last year in New York seemed to finally give in to the idea that he can't just run around and chuck it downfield to Jeff Janis anymore. He has to settle for the check down to the running back. The Jets had the third under Rodgers. The Jets had the third highest target share to the running back position. That could be good for a guy like Jaylen Warren if he takes that role. And then finally at RB35, Cam Scadaboo, the vibes king. I mean, I don't know what to say about this guy except for that he was crazy productive in college, especially as a pass catcher. His pass catching numbers are off the charts good. So I know this sounds, really quite simple and maybe a little bit basic, but the Giants players and fans are going to love this guy. He's going to get the ball in a screen pass. He's going to bulldoze 3 guys on one play, and the crowd is going to erupt in a way that will keep him on the field. And the coaches will say, feed him the ball, feed this guy. Right. And he's going to do the spoon thing, the Zeke thing. And it's over. It's over. It's over for Singletary. It's over for that other guy, Tyrone Tracy. So I do like Scadaboo as a 0 RB or a 0 RB guy. All right, let's get to the questions. Dynasty Dave is back in the chat. Says the ADP seems high for Swift and Tootin as well. Now, what's the Tootin's first name? I always mess it up.
Bashal
Tootin. Who, by the way, Liam Cohen, kiss of death, last week said kid's got to work on his pass protection. So it's over. We know that it's over now for Tootin.
Can't happen.
And unfortunately, I looked it up, and Pro Football Focus graded Tootin as one of the worst pass blocking running backs in college football last year. So Tootin has seen a jump in ADP. He's gone from no, I'm sorry. I was thinking of someone else apparently, because he's actually dropped. He's dropped by 5.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's probably that you haven't been in the underdog streets in the past like 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks now at this point, because he did jump right after the draft. Everyone saw, oh, there's a clear pathway to Travis Etienne is just not the guy. He's been relatively inefficient for his entire career outside of his first season. And Tank Bigsby is fun, but he seems like a very limited player. There's a very clear path to touches, and everyone was just chomping at the bit to get their Bashal Tootin. He's extremely exciting. He's a guy you can see that a small role where he's very efficient grows into a large role, very similar to Bucky Irving last year. Yeah. And we even got last year the Rachaad White. He's always going to be trusted in pass pro. And even down the stretch, he was still getting out there for routes. But at some point, it really failed to matter for Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving wasn't getting 100% of the carries. You didn't need that. And he almost did get 100% of the carries in the final game or two. But he still wasn't out there for all the pass catching snaps. He wasn't getting all the targets. But you got a lot of them for a guy you drafted in the 14th or 15th round. And I think that's the pitch with Tootin. And the reason people in the past 2 or 3 weeks have pulled back is we got the very first snap of either minicamp or OTAs. He fumbles. Liam Cohen talks about it. Liam Cohen wasn't overly punitive the way Ben Johnson seems to be very punitive about players missing time, those being specifically Luther Burden, but maybe a little bit of Colson Loveland too. He called it a learning moment. I didn't think it was a big deal. I don't remember if I wrote the blurb. I was just on that the day that happened. It didn't seem like he was too bent out of shape about it. And when he says he needs to work on pass protection, this is something that nearly every single rookie entering the NFL has to work on. Of course, I would love for Liam Cohen to be man, we're shocked at how good this guy is in pass pro out of the gate. Yes. That just doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess Tootin would be, is he the most likely guy to take over the backfield if ETN gets traded? I feel like Bigsby is not really being phased out completely, especially as
I think it would be the Bucky Irving type of outcome, or Tyrone Tracy is what we hope for. We're you're getting 15 touches a game maybe, but there are more than 15 touches to go around in most backfield. Yeah, even Devin Singletary wasn't a game day inactive, right? They were still bringing a backup running back, still using him. There would be games where Devin Singletary would pop up 5 or 6 carries because Tracy loved to fumble, and then he would fumble and be hey, you're getting this drive off. Actually, that fumble will get you this next drive off. Right. And he also dropped passes and also wasn't good in pass pro. I like Cam Scadaboo, by the way. I agree with that one, given all the Tyrone Tracy hate I'm dispensing.
Yeah.
But I do think that we're probably not getting a 20 touch a game kind of month from Bashal Tootin, because there are 2 guys who can both take touches. I don't think Travis Etienne's that good. I think Tank Bigsby is limited, but both of them will contribute in some way. But it's we don't get to make this bet very often. We're a super exciting, hyper productive running back that the team drafts. I don't want to say that highly. I think it was top of the 4th round. But he's also someone who, when he was interviewing, I believe this is GM James Gladstone, the Zoomer,
brought this up. This is stuck in my head since you told me 2 weeks ago. Tell the people.
It's such a good anecdote. Is while he was interviewing for the GM job, he specifically said that Bashal Tutin was the kind of player that he would draft. They're talking like what I would assume the context is like James Gladstone. What are the types of traits and players you're looking for? And he used Bashal Tutin as an example of someone he would like to draft. And of course, he gets the opportunity to do so. He does it. And this is a new regime that has zero ties to the current running backs. Travis Etienne's almost certainly not going to be on the roster next year. Tank Bigsby probably has 1 year left beyond this year. I believe that would be the extent of his rookie contract. But the way the team is set up, Tutin at this point is the best bet they have at like, this is the future of running back on the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's the type of player I think we should expect to really come on in the second half of the season. I wouldn't be starting him in weeks 1, 2, 3, probably not 4 or 5. But you weren't doing that with Bucky Irving either. And he still turned out to be one of the like players who defined the second half of the season last year.
You do have to be patient on these rookie backs who might have a chance to take over in the second half of the season. Or even honestly, sometimes it takes longer than that. You know, sometimes you're talking about around Thanksgiving, you know, when you might see the rookie really like have the confidence of the coaching staff, have the confidence in himself to take on something close to a 3-down roll. I know 3-down rolls are elusive at best in the NFL these days, but Tutin, it makes sense. And that anecdote has stuck in my head because, you know, old Jimmy Gladstone, okay? I mean, I call him Jimmy. I know him personally. He goes in and he says, listen, I'm an analytics king. I've never watched a game. I watch the spreadsheets. And they say, well, what kind of player do you like? And he says, Bashal Tutin out of Virginia Tech. You know, that says to me that Tutin will, I don't know, get a lot of opportunities to be the guy here because the GM likes him so much that he named him in an interview and then immediately drafted him. So I think that matters. I don't know how much it matters. It's hard, you know,
I agree.
It's an anecdote. We can't quantify it. I can't run it through the machine, but it does make me think. Makes me think strongly that he might be the guy. All right. Let's go on to another question here from another user who says, who do you like out of the mid-round rookies, rookie running backs? RJ Harvey, Judkins, Henderson, or Caleb Johnson? Guys, can you use full names? Especially when it's Johnson, when it's a guy named Johnson, it'd be great.
Like that could be Kerryon Johnson for all we know.
It could be Kerryon. Yes. Oh, remember that guy.
I remember that guy.
Oh man, yeah. You were what in the middle school?
Oh man, that was my prime. Drafting Kerryon Johnson in the 4th round.
All right. So I've had some discourse actually about the Denver backfield online today, and I think there's a sense that it's kind of over for RJ Harvey. Now that they signed J.K. Dobbins off the street after I guess nobody else really wanted him. And now it's Dobbins' backfield to lose. I struggle with this because although Dobbins had a nice first, month of last season,
2 games, but yes,
what was it?
It was like 2 games. It's 2 carries, frankly.
And really, look, and I know this is like the thing where you say, well, if you take away his big run.
I know. I'm doing it. I always call all you guys out for it. I'm doing it.
Look, I mean, but let's be real. Like, he got there for fantasy because he had 2 of like the longest runs you'll ever see from a running back. So
2 of the slowest, longest runs you'll ever see, by the way.
So slow. Okay, so I think Kyle's in agreement here. I think the Broncos, they didn't look at RJ Harvey in minicamp and say, "Oh God, we've made an awful mistake. We got to go get Dobbins." Like break glass in case of emergency. Dobbins is on the team, right? No, I think they looked at Julian McLaughlin and Audric Estime and they said, "This is over. Like whatever this is not happening. We have to, Jaleel proof ourselves. We have to estimate proof ourselves to make sure these guys literally never touch the ball." And so I do think Dobbins is going to be involved, but I have a hard time believing this team and Sean Payton and George Patton and everybody else with the name of Patton or Payton or Patton in the Denver organization. They were obsessed with Harvey throughout the draft process, and then they draft him. And and now it's like they are not committed anymore. I think they're committed to this guy. I think that he eventually will be the clear RB1.
Yeah, that's kind of how I view it too. And it's not that they signed J.K. Dobbins to be purely a backup, right? I do think Peyton has a philosophical commitment to the idea that he wants to deploy his backs in somewhat specialist kind of roles, but I don't think the Dobbins specialist role is all that valuable and really kneecaps RJ Harvey. Of course, I would rather just like him be like, yeah, we're actually going to only take one running back to the game day active roster of the, what do they take, like 45? They have 53 and they have to scratch like 8 of them or whatever it is. Like we only do one running back. It's running back and wide receiver, and we take 8 wide receivers. You know, I love to rotate them, but this year it's one running back. He gets every touch. Like, of course, I would love that. But did we really think that they were going to try out, like you said, even if it was just the backups, maybe the worst backup crew of the NFL, given that we saw them fail so spectacularly last year, Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin, they were never going to have those guys as backups. I would have liked them to actually just have those guys as backups and commit to RJ Harvey. But I think maybe we got out a little bit out over our skis right after the draft and just saying like, RJ Harvey's the man, nothing can stop us now. But I still think if someone's going to be the receiving back, the explosive back, the guy that Sean Payton's like, how do we get this guy to 7 yards a carry, but do it 200 times? Like that is still almost certainly going to be RJ Harvey. And if the competition is like never, like last year was the healthy season for J.K. Dobbins. He finally stayed healthy. You know what that meant? Only one stint on injured reserve. Like that's the healthy season. I'm not trying to say, you know what I am trying to say that if I had to predict a running back to get injured, like J.K. Dobbins would be the top of my list. I don't want to be too confident in that, but he's also a player who we saw last year wore down so tremendously under a meaningful workload. Like we said, the first 2 games, he looked super elite in terms of the efficiency metrics, and pretty much instantly he started to wear down, and that seemed to be exacerbated by the fact that Gus Edwards got hurt, and they had to keep giving J.K. Dobbins the ball, and he turned into a pretty uninspiring grinder almost instantly. So I think just in the way that we say, like, RJ Harvey, it doesn't seem like they want to load him up with touches. I can bet you right now, they also don't want to load J.K. Dobbins up with touches.
No, exactly. Also, you know, Bo Nix's penchant for checking down, I think will be good for a guy like Harvey. You know, I want to say that the rushing environment in Denver is pretty good. Like when you look at the metrics, like rush yards created before contact, the Denver offensive line was pretty elite last year. Dropped off a little bit near the end, but really solid. It was maddening if you had drafted Javonte Williams, say, because all the spreadsheets aligned in a way that said some Broncos running backs should be productive, like should be really usable in 12-team leagues. And outside of like a late season explosion from Javonte Williams, when I had him on my bench, and I will never ever recover from that, emotionally, physically, or in any way. Beyond that, he was totally unusable. So I think this is actually, despite last year's struggles and disappointments for Denver's offense, I should say the running game at least, this is actually a very positive and good fantasy-friendly rushing environment for Broncos backs. All right.
It's also a really strong pass catching environment too. Again, like you said, it was a great rushing environment. They had a good offensive line and the offense was good, but they're not the Chiefs trying to throw, even if they're boring passes. The Chiefs still were a pass rate over expected monster last year. Same with like the Bengals, right? These are teams that they want to pass the football. This was not that team. They're a little more balanced with a good offensive line, but has a quarterback who can keep, we talked about it with the Cardinals, that can keep the plays, keep the chains moving, right? Get you volume. So they were good on the ground. They were 4th in the NFL in running back targets as well. Another Sean Payton staple is just throwing to the running backs, and these total jabronis just couldn't make anything of it. Last year, every draft, I was like, I want to get myself a Bronco, because we know Sean Payton creates offensive environments that are phenomenal for his running backs. He did it again last year with the offensive line, with the balance play calling, and with a ton of targets. Like I said, 4th most total targets for combined backfields. And these guys just weren't good enough to make a thing out of it. But we think RJ Harvey's good. And frankly, I think J.K. Dobbins is way better than Javonte was last year, than Jaleel was last year, than Audric Estime. So his prices come up to the point where I think it's fine, but he's the RB39. He might even go cheaper in your home leagues. RB39 seems fine right now. We talked about guys who like, I have a bunch of fun, exciting second half of the season type of bets. If you need someone to curry your way to a decent running back room for a month or two, Dobbins is fine as a low-end RB3 or 4.
I agree. And, you know, if anything, you know, happens to Harvey, if he misses any time, then it's the Dobbins show, like completely. I'm very confident of that. So Dobbins is not like the worst pick, especially if you're doing the 0 RB or hero RB thing in your redraft leagues. I did want to hit up Brad Beaton. I'm sorry, Brad Beatson, my boy. He says, my sources tell me Denny is neither mad nor upset about Kyle's immaculate flow and clean shave. And you're right. Look,
I almost brought up your shave. You look like you haven't shaved in 12 hours, 16. What is going on? Because normally you look like razor sharp.
Yeah, no, I know this is a rare look for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's been about 24 hours since I shaved. So I have a lot of stubble. You have no stubble on the day that I have stubble. You look great. You look young and fresh. And Brad is right. I'm not jealous. I'm not mad. I'm not upset at all. So it's fine. All right. And then also Brad wanted to throw out this is just a disgusting thought, but we're gonna discuss it here.
Entertain it, yeah.
What if Kyle Monungai, who's a running back,
I think you got the syllables right. Just Monungai.
He never fumbled in college. The Bears, he's on the Bears roster for now. Who knows in August? Yeah. But what if he's the new David Montgomery and Ben Johnson's system? What? No one's talking about this. I don't know. What have you had any thoughts about Ben Monungai?
Yeah, I don't think he was just really not a good prospect. Like, did not pop in any of the metrics, but wasn't a guy who like Devin Neal, who was like Devin Neal year in and year out was just churning out these like 200 plus touch, like 1,500 yards from scrimmage kind of seasons on at the start of his career, just a really awful Kansas team. And ended up getting kind of good in part because he was really good. And so we didn't have that sort of, I don't know if the efficiency metrics love him, but just the overall body of work is elite from Kyle Monungai. He had like 2 fine seasons in which, again, the efficiency numbers weren't very good. And he was, I believe, a 7th round pick. So you don't really have a ton of buy-in from the team. You don't have a buy-in from my belief in his talent. I'm open to the idea that with a strong training camp, like I could be drafting him as like a 20th round kind of guy, but he's a guy who needs to prove it to me. One, he didn't prove it in the draft. He didn't prove it in college. So you've got to prove it a lot in a short amount of time in training camp. But would it stun me if at the end of, August 28th or whatever, we're like, man, I think Roschon Johnson's just going to be a healthy scratch. They're taking Kyle Monungai to games over him. Like, no, Roschon's not good either. So I'm my ears are perked up for Kyle Monungai because I just think this is a backfield really devoid of talent that should really have someone emerge. It should have, this is a team that's going to place an emphasis on the run. We know that's what's going to happen under Ben Johnson, and they should be good at it too. So I want to be very receptive to anyone getting touches. Monungai just never proved that he can be like an NFL caliber talent, but Roschon Johnson barely has either. Like DeAndre Swift, since joining the NFL, hit or miss, mostly towards the miss. So I'm receptive to the idea that in the future, I could possibly consider maybe adding in the 20th round Kyle Monungai. And that's all I'm at right now.
Look, Monungai gets the Kyle Dvorchak 20th round endorsement. That's all he can hope for at this point. Mm-hmm. And we appreciate your thoughts there. By the way, regarding my stubble, someone in the chat says that we call it season 5 Fox Mulder. And you're right. That's when David Duchovny stopped shaving every day for the X-Files. And he somehow looked better. He's always so handsome, and people compare him to me. And so I'm going to call him handsome, obviously. We have a question about Jonathan Taylor from David. Is Jonathan Taylor being overdrafted? The Colts offensive line seems to have gotten much worse this offseason. I mean, look, Taylor is not a guy that I'm like hammering right now. He's going as RB8 in best ball drafts. Like, he's on the board with Devon Achane and Bucky Irving and Josh Jacobs to an extent. For me, if you're looking at those 4, I would go Irving, Achane, Taylor, Jacobs. Are you in similar feelings, or would you prioritize Taylor?
No, I think I'm similar, and even slightly. I would take Jacobs over him too. Like, Jacobs has a much better pass catching role on a much better team. Like, his quarterback, as much as I'm frustrated that the Packers don't want Jordan Love to throw 40 times a game, I mean, it's the setup we talked about earlier. Jordan Love is more than good enough to keep the chains moving. And then every time they get a first down, the team's like, and we're running it again. Like, this is a perfect setup for running back with surrounding talent and the running back's role. So I think I would, amongst those guys, I don't think Taylor is in a tier below them. I think it's all roughly the same tier. Maybe you could group Achane above that tier, given I think he's maybe the most pure talent and excitement of the bunch.
Yeah.
But I'll just call them all for now. For this argument, I'll call them all the same tier. I think Taylor's at the back of the tier, largely just because of the lack of a true pass catching role. And I think of those teams, he's got to be on the worst offense, right? Like the upside is Daniel Jones is the starter. And we're probably still at some point seeing an Anthony Richardson start because Daniel Jones also can't hold down a starting job. He's also really bad. His team cut him last year and he wound up on the practice squad of another team. So it's, I think, the team with the most potential for like true dysfunction.
Jonathan Taylor averaged last season 2 targets per game. I don't know how to paint the upside picture for a running back who has that sort of usage in the pass game. I mean, he's not Derrick Henry. He can't just get there on the occasional like 65-yard touchdown. Although he is an explosive back. I'm not trying to.
He's in that category, but no one's Derrick Henry. Maybe Nick Chubb at his peak was Derrick Henry. There's been kind of 2 guys in our recent 5 to 6 year stretch of fantasy football who can get there as just non-factors in the pass catching game.
So my only thought about like what might not be priced into Jonathan Taylor's ADP at the moment, or probably at all this summer, is that the Colts pass just pure. I'm not talking about pass rate over expected. I'm not talking about any of the fancy stuff. I'm just talking about pure dropbacks, pure pass attempts, right? So they go from like 30th last year to maybe like 15th this year, like maybe even like 13th or something, right? Something crazy like 13th. And that boosts volume for everybody. That means that it's Josh Downs season all day. That means that it's Pittman season. It could also mean that Taylor sees, I don't know, like 4 targets per game, which you can work with 4 targets for a running back who's getting all the carries as well. So maybe that's not being priced into Taylor's ADP, but I do tend to fade him at that ADP. I think that his like best case scenario is like RB5, and he's being drafted at RB8. So I don't know. I'm not into it. Let's go on to Brad is back in the chat. Yes, and Brad says since Rotopad is on vacation, can we get some appreciation for Jacoby Myers and other boring wide receivers who love to score PPR points? Yes, we can. We're going to do that right now. I'm going to pull up the ADPs for wide receivers. We're going to talk about the most boring receivers possible because Rotopat has passed a law in the legislature, the Rotoworld legislature, that says no talk of boring receivers, including Jacoby Myers, who, by the way, was 12th last year in wide receiver receptions. How did that happen? All right, so we got, okay, let's start with like Courtland Sutton at wide receiver 27. Yes or no, Kyle?
No.
Okay, he's too old, too
expensive. I think he goes in the range where like there are guys in that range who could really hurt me in the season. Whereas when you get to a guy like Jacoby Myers a little bit later, or if we talk about like, I don't love Darnell Mooney, but I think when we talked about this in the last show, I was like, there are guys in this range that I really want to draft. And then I looked and I was like, no, there's not many guys in this range I want to draft.
Well, okay. All right. Well, I think I know what you're going to say here. Courtland Sutton is going as wide receiver 27. Your guy, the transcendent talent, the most important player in the history of organized sports, Travis Hunter, is going as wide receiver 30. So you're taking Hunter all day.
Yeah,
easily. Okay. 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 George Pickens, not boring, but while we're in this area, right? Is it Pickens or Hunter for you?
That's probably Pickens there. Pickens isn't boring. He's just awesome. I think he's really good at football.
No, he's not. He's not boring. No.
No, yeah, I agree that like he's another player where maybe you probably you should argue that his ceiling is capped, but in the way that like Jalen Waddles was capped when he went from like 1,300 yards a few years ago, like being the number 2 on maybe the most pass-friendly offense in the NFL is still a pretty high ceiling. It's maybe not the highest ceiling in the world, but at this point, I think the ceiling is high enough. I don't really know if like Sutton quite has that ceiling, but I can see the vision with Pickens. I just think he's really, really good.
I think that Pickens is not only interesting, for his own fantasy purposes, but it makes Dak Prescott far more interesting. I
agree.
Some other wide receivers who might be considered boring, who I don't mind. Khalil Shakir at wide receiver 44. Boring, super boring. Doesn't even have like a strong route rate, but last year was targeted on something like 35% of his routes against zone, I believe. And then against man, it was a little different. But the Bills face a ton of zone because that's what you play against mobile quarterbacks, against dual threat quarterbacks like Josh Allen. So I think he's boring, but he can get you there. And then, well, he's not boring either. But Josh Downs at wide receiver 46, that's awesome. Too low, man. That's
free money. Like you'll never convince me that the guy who it's not like he's playing a Marvin Mims level of relegated role. Like Marvin Mims plays a very unique role that I'm not sure how that expands. Obviously, he's really efficient, but I don't know if being a running back receiver hybrid on some plays and just a pure deep threat on other plays, if that is a scalable role into being a true fantasy breakout. Josh Downs earning a target on a third of his routes. That seems like it'll scale. Obviously, if he runs 100% of the routes, no one does, but if he ran 100% of the routes, we wouldn't expect that 30-something% target per route rate to scale. But if it drops back by even like 5%, which would be an insane drop, he would still be awesome. So He's a player where I can see how even if you drop his efficiency as his role grows, which you would expect, he has so much room to fall that when he does, but in my mind, when he does increase his role, it's just an absolute monster season waiting to happen. So both fun in that he's young and pops in the spreadsheets, and boring in that he gets a lot of targets, and those guys are not the most like flashy. Right. But, like, frankly, I got yelled at for not liking JMO by you a few weeks ago. And like, this is the kind of fun I want, is like guy who earns the football a lot. That is the most fun for fantasy, because earning the football is, one, a very strong indicator of talent. Two, scores you a lot of fantasy points.
Yeah, unfortunately, JMO does not command the football at a high rate. I've tried to work around that, but I see no way out of that little conundrum. So I could be catastrophically wrong on Jameson Williams, who apparently, according to Rotoworld.com, is a trade candidate next year. Always a trade candidate, I guess. Another boring receiver who you like, which I know you have a good argument, I just can't get there, is Jalen Waddle at wide receiver 29. So boring. Yet with Jonnu Smith out of the picture, he might finally see the ball, and that could be great for him and Tyreek Hill. You're still in on Waddle, correct?
I will say this. He goes in a range where, like, it's fine. I draft Waddle there, but he goes on underdog. He goes right around guys like, Courtland Sutton, Pickens, Travis Hunter. That group we just said, I think those are all varying levels of good picks. Like, I don't think Sutton is a great pick, but I don't think he's terrible. Like, I've taken my fair share of Courtland Sutton when the board lines up in a way that I think it's smart. George Pickens is the exact same profile, right? He's probably never going to unseat the wide receiver one of the team, but I just believe in his body of work as a talent, especially with Jalen Waddle. You look at the most efficient wide receivers in the past 3 or 4 years, it's Jalen Waddle, because much like Tyreek Hill and much like Tua, when the offense was working well, was so incredibly efficient. Mm-hmm. And last year, of course, it scared me off of him, but not necessarily at these prices. So I don't think he's a smash. I don't think he's a great, incredible target. Zay Flowers is just the wide receiver one on his team, and his team's good at passing the football. I like that bet a lot. I like the Travis Hunter bet a lot, but I'm certainly wouldn't say I'm out on Waddle.
Waddle makes sense for me if you're doing a best ball draft and you have Tyreek and then you get Tua later, you might as well throw Waddle in that mix. Oh, by the way, so folks, the other day I texted Kyle that I had started a DraftKings best ball draft. I won a ticket for the $20 $60 trillion DraftKings contest, and I started with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, right?
Chase Brown too, I think, right?
Chase Brown. I'm sorry. Yes, I started right. Number one overall was Jamar Chase, and then at the 2-3 turn, it was Chase Brown and T. Higgins. So I'm in on the Bengals, right? Got to have my Joe Burrow, right? I miss out on him by 2 picks. Devastation. I forget that I have queued up Andre Yoshivas and Mike Gesicki.
No,
just as maybes, right? And I get auto picked in the middle of the night. so now I have a team with 5 Bengals skill players and no Joe Burrow. Mm-hmm. That team is so dead. It's insane.
Look, honestly, that team's so dead. But in theory, we are going. This draft's long done, but we are getting Justin Fields. We are getting Justin Fields is a very clear one where he can win big time without a single one of his pass catchers getting there. Drake May, another one where extremely efficient runner. And if you want his pass catchers, get like a Hunter Henry and just hope that like Hunter Henry's guy who scores 9 touchdowns.
Right.
And they spread the production out. And you want Drake May for his rushing and he throws some touchdowns. And those are the two that I've come up with. You got those two.
Well, and the worst part is that, I got Yoshivas and Gesicki like in like the 6th and 7th round.
Yeah.
Like that's devastating. Otherwise it would have been a good team. I'm trying
Sure, yeah, it's fine if you get them in the 20th and 19th round.
I'm scrambling like hell. I actually, you know what? I'm not going to check right now because we're podcasting, but I did get Fields. I believe I got May as well. And I kind of wanted to get crazy and get like Milrow in the last round, just to cobble together some like rushing quarterbacks who might give me something without needing pass catchers to get there. You know what I mean? And by the way, Billy is in the chat. He says the star method hit Denny.
Yeah.
And
on baseball Twitter, this has the phenomenon you described happening. Has a name, the star method. You star the players, and it comes back to bite you. It already has a name.
So, am I misremembering, Kyle, that in the old days the draft timer used to shut off at night, or no? Did that ever happen?
I don't remember. Like, how old are we talking here, too? Like,
I don't know.
Like back in the MFL 10 days when you were just drafting like the cash games.
No, I wasn't thinking that far back, but I don't know, man. Like,
I seriously have not done a slow draft in years. I hate slow drafts.
Yeah.
So
I woke up, and I look at my phone. I'm like, I haven't picked in this draft for a while, and I have Andre Yoshivas in the 7th round. I'm going to jump out the window. So. Yeah, Billy says he enjoyed that story. Dynasty Dave says Hunter is in the hen house, baby. Travis Hunter, I believe. Sure. He's in the hen house. Okay, so you heard it here first. As far as quarterbacks go in redraft, Kyle, you mentioned Fields, you mentioned May. Does Fields strike you as someone who's being drafted higher than you would like? For me, it's kind of borderline at this point. It's not like last summer where Fields was free. You actually do have to pay for him because he has a 17 game job here with the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, he still goes a little cheaper than I'm taking him a decent amount. So he actually does still go a little cheaper than I'd like, or a little cheaper than I think he should, rather. Goes behind Bo Nix, who Bo Nix is certainly, like, obviously, he's a better talent, better at winning football games than Justin Fields. We especially saw in the second half of the year last year, the Bo Nix rushing profile really started to fall off. It's as he became better and more comfortable as a passer. You look at like the first month or two of the season, and Bo Nix had one of maybe the highest clean pocket scramble rate in the NFL, as in no one's pressuring him and he just tucks it and runs anyways. Yeah. And to me, that is like, anecdotally, but also I'm 100% sure you could find this in the data, that's just such a stereotypical rookie quarterback, like flight of foot kind of thing, where he checks the first read, he isn't there. Maybe he checks the second read, isn't open, and he's just gone. Because Bo Nix is a good athlete. He's capable of at least generating those scramble yards. But as his rushing profile petered out, maybe not as fun or not as high of a ceiling bet, given that maybe he just doesn't do both those things at the same time. When he's comfortable as a passer, when he's getting in rhythm, he's not a guy who runs the football. And if things are not going well, that's not great, but he can paper over it with the rushing production. Maybe he just ends up being more of a floor play than a ceiling play, a guy who can climb from right now going as the QB9 to say the QB 4, 5, or 6. Justin Fields can absolutely be like the QB 4, 5, or 6. He's like the second or third best rushing season for a quarterback in NFL history on his resume. And now he gets maybe the best. I mean, he almost certainly gets the best coaching staff of his career, especially offensively. Maybe last year. No, I can't even do it with Arthur Smith. This is probably the best coaching staff he's had his entire career. I don't think he's going to be airing it out a ton. I also think his ceiling is capped in that part of Justin Fields' appeal is that, or at least part of the conceit you make when you sign Justin Fields is you're going to take sacks. You're going to need to protect him. He's going to have some turnovers, but the rushing potential is so good that I could easily see him jumping Bo Nix, jumping Kyler Murray, jumping Baker Mayfield. I mean, it sucks. He could easily jump Patrick Mahomes too. Like, he probably just projects to outscore Patrick Mahomes with the rushing production. So I could very easily see him getting to top 4, top 5,
right?
So just outside of the elites.
So you're taking Fields at QB 10. That's his average ADP. That's right around Bo Nix and Brock Purdy. And you're looking above him. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm back in on Fields as the QB10 because he's going to outscore Nix, probably.
Yeah.
He's going to outscore Kyler Murray, who's going as QB8 for some reason. He's probably going to outscore Baker Mayfield. Yeah, and then Mahomes.
Baker Mayfield has insane regression coming his way. I think he's good enough to stave some of it off where he doesn't go to 0, obviously, but his touchdown last season was both abnormally high for the NFL, but abnormally high for his own career standards. They're a really good offense, but again, they lost, Chris Godwin. I don't know how much they get from him coming back. They are losing again their offensive coordinator as well. You just can't project him to throw as many touchdowns as he did last year. So I don't know if I take Fields over him, but you could tell me you would and be like, sure, these are two very different quarterbacks who probably score similarly.
And unlike last year, we don't have to worry about Fields being benched for no reason, like he was in Pittsburgh, one of the most confounding benchings I think I've ever seen. All right, we're going to wrap up on this one. Chad's in the chat. He says, quick dynasty question. Just traded Mike Evans and Terry McLaurin for Ladd McConkey. Is there enough risk in the veterans and long-term in Ladd McConkey to justify the price point? Now, Kyle actually wrote a really good piece on wide receivers whose metrics really popped last year. McConkey was the cover guy for that piece, rightfully so. Made me at least partially a believer in Ladd's season. So what do you say here? Was that too much to give up for McConkey?
No, I would do that 10 times out of 10. Not bad players you're giving up either, but I think there's a real potential for Ladd to be a top 3 or 4 fantasy receiver going forward. When you look at what he did as a rookie, he was absurdly efficient. He was really good at both yards per route run and first downs per route run. He was great in terms of PFF receiving grade. The few things that you would say, this is what is stopping him from becoming a superstar are not his efficiency or how he wins, because he can really win at all depths. He can play inside, outside. He can beat man, he can beat zone. The thing is, he just wasn't an absolute target commander in the way that Malik Neighbors was. But the one thing that a lot of the superstar receivers of today have done is that they start off their careers looking really efficient, and then their role grows, which shouldn't be super surprising. But I think there's a kernel of truth is that you just can't fake being super dynamic. You can't fake either being dynamite with the ball in your hands in the way that Deebo Samuel, his first NFL snap, you can kind of see that that's who he's going to be, or guys like Nico Collins, who at some point the guy who wins 15 yards downfield 5 times a game, it's really hard to fake that. Nico Collins is actually a good example of a guy who progressed at that throughout his career, but ultimately being really efficient early is really predictive, and earning the ball early in your career is also predictive, but it's something that's a little more easy to grow, especially proportional to the rest of the league, is that you can have your role increase over time. You can't just become Deebo Samuel at some point in your career. You just are or you aren't. And you can't just one day he was Antonio Brown, the next day he wasn't. In terms of early in his career, Brown's the perfect example of this. He was nearly 3 yards per route run as a rookie, but he ran 100 routes. It was very clear that this guy should run 90% of the routes. And I think that's kind of what we get with Ladd McConkey, where you should be targeting him as often as you can and find out, can he get to a 32, a 33% target share, given how good he played as a rookie? Does that always happen? Does everyone make that leap? No, some guys are capped out as the wide receiver 10 or 11. But he's a good bet if players are going to surge from being a fringe wide receiver 1 to a top 4, top 5 guy. I think he's roughly just as good of a bet as Brian Thomas or Malik Neighbors. Maybe a 5% less of a good bet. Wow. But not that far off.
That's strong. That's a strong take. Wow.
I think he's really good.
Kyle's in. Kyle is all the way in. Okay, I said we're gonna end on that one. We're not. We're gonna end on this one. Rashee Rice already going in the middle of the second round. I don't know about that, but I mean, I guess in some draft rooms, maybe Chiefs only leagues. I don't know.
No, he's been shooting up lately. He just crossed the 2-3 border Rubicon.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, Billy. Sorry, I got sarcastic there, and that was unnecessary of me. I will say this. Kyle just mentioned the importance of early career football commanding ability. Last year, before his week 4 injury, I know it's a small sample, whatever. That's all we have to work with. Rashee Rice, 35% target per route run rate. That was second only to Puka Nacua over the season's first month. I think that says something about his role. He basically he reduced Travis Kelce to a waiver wire tight end Okay. We have to remember that. So his, reemergence in the Kansas City offense, and I wrote about this in my piece on the site if you guys want to check it out. It's probably real bad for Kelce. It's probably pretty bad for Xavier Worthy as well, if he resumes that role, because he was dominating looks from Patrick Mahomes in the season's first month. So I do like him. That's a little priced up for me, but I don't mind it too much.
I mean, he's the perfect example of what I was talking about. Like, you just can't fake being really special at football, but you can grow your role. As a rookie, it took him like 2 agonizing months to just get up to a full-time route rate and to command like these 25% plus target shares, when at that point in 2023, we could already see that the end was nigh for Travis Kelce. We're like, you have to get Rashee Rice more involved. And they were really hesitant to do so, but all of his per route stuff, his yak stuff, was like, this guy looks like a superstar. And then late in his rookie season, it starts to really come together. And more importantly, it's only 3 games, but in the second season, you see the target share jump. You see the target per route run jump, where he had to prove it as a rookie time and time again by being super efficient and not getting the ball, I think, as much as we all think he should have. But by the second season, the Chiefs relented with that kind of nonsense. And we're like, we are building the entire plane for 3 games out of Rashee Rice. Like, that's what the progression looks like. I think that's why he was actually another player I mentioned in that article, where it kind of reminds me of like, that's what we could see from Ladd, is he proves it time and time again as a rookie. Frankly, he should have just had a 30% target share in week 1 of 2024. That's not how NFL teams work. They make the guys earn it. They make them prove it. And we saw that with Rashee Rice. And then he, for 3 games, proved it, that he was a superstar at the beginning of 2024. And of course, Mahomes nukes his freaking knee, and all my best ball teams go down in flames. But I'm fully bought into the idea that when healthy, Rashee Rice is an absolute superstar. The only thing really standing in his way right now, given that the legal troubles seem to have been kicked down the road again to probably 2026, no guarantees, but that's kind of where the winds are blowing right now, is just, does he come back healthy from the knee issue? No way to know. It does seem like he's running full speed very early, which makes me think he could be like back to 100% as of week 1 in terms of like his physical capabilities. I want to be drafting him even into the second round. I will say at ADP 22, I will draw the line at 19, which is where Ladd McConkey goes. And I think that's a similar talent bet. Once he hits the McConkey, AJ Brown, Drake London tier, I just don't have to take my quarterback just blew up my knee risk with those guys, even if I think he's just as talented.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're going to log off in a second here. And in the show, I do want to say, before that injury in week 4 to Rashee Rice, I think I'm right in saying that he profiled as the most important pick in all of fantasy last year.
He's up there, yeah. He was on pace for like the wide receiver 2 or 3 overall season, 3 games, but man.
And he was going pretty late. I mean, he was going as like the wide receiver 20 last off season.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So just remember that about Rashee Rice. All right, folks, thank you for joining me and joining Kyle for this YouTube Q&A. We'll do these different parts throughout the summer. Of course, things will start ramping up with training camp soon. Keep it locked to rotoworld.com for all the latest in fantasy news, NFL news. Check out our team preview series. Kyle and I will be profiling every wide receiver in the history of the NFL. I'm just kidding, in the current NFL for the site pretty soon here. And then also don't forget to join us on Twitch. We are live on Twitch, if I am correct about that, on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then obviously the podcast will be out later that day. RotoPat will be back next week. So for me, Denny, and Kyle over there, we thank you, and we will see you Thursday.